Mr. Andio. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, man. It's great to be here with you.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, sorry about the rigmarole. I just had to answer a phone, and I'm not. It's not a secret that I'm not technologically gifted, but
That
I,
makes two of us.
I do have the gift of gab. So thank God for that. I'm going to just use that today to speak with Mr. Andio, who works for Kuvo radio station in Denver, famous radio station. It's a jazz radio station, but I'll let him elaborate on that here in just a little bit. We're going to be discussing a mutual interest of ours, a gentleman by the name of Tommy Bolin. For those of you that do not know, Tommy really is a phenomenal guitar player. It's kind of amazing to me of how many people don't even know about him. But we'll get into all of that here in a little bit. But hang in there because this is going to be a treat. So, Andy, you are yourself a musician.
Yes, I am.
You are yourself a poet.
Yeah,
And you are also, of course, in one of the most famous radio stations in the country, Kuvo. So I'll
yeah.
just let you elaborate on all of that about yourself and tell us a bit about how it all started and, so forth and so
Okay.
on.
Okay. Well, I'm born in 1955 and wound up in Denver. Been here for a long time. Started playing bass in 1965.
Wow.
My mom and dad were both musicians,
Hmm.
and I got lessons from Carol Kay early on. And she was up at Nederland doing work at the Caribou Ranch. So she was playing for Elton John and the Beach Boys and so on. And when she wasn't doing that, she was teaching. So I
Tell
got
me
my
the
bass
name
lessons from
again. I
her.
want to make sure I didn't miss it. Tell me the name.
Carol Kay.
Carol K. Wow. Wow. Okay.
She was on Good Vibrations. She did the bass line for The Beat Goes On, And my I cut my teeth learning from her. She's where my foundation comes from. So anyway, I became a pretty good bass player back in the day, and being in Denver, it was kind of a music hub of the Midwest. It wasn't just a flyover. Um, and one of the bands that I started seeing was Zephyr. They were big from like 68, 69 into the early 70s.
Yeah.
And right about that time, Tommy sat in with Billy Cobham on his very first recording. This album's called Spectrum.
By the way,
And some of the best playing,
yeah, I've been listening to that album as you
go ahead.
recommended. It is amazing. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, it's a life-changing album. So there he is. He just is sitting in as a guitarist. Um, I'm pretty sure that Alphonse Mouzon had recommended him. He played with Alphonse on some level as a sideman or something, and so he recommended him to Billy Cobham. Hey, try out this guy. And Billy smartly knew he was, just having his first work after the Mahavishnu Orchestra, and wanted to go with a rock guitar player as opposed to another, jazz kind of John McLaughlin esque, Larry Coryell kind of guy.
Right.
So he went with Tommy Bolin. Well, he didn't know just how many chops Tommy had, but that album is a must listen. Spectrum
Oh my
for
goodness.
for anybody who jazz or rock.
Yeah.
As it happens, one of the stories on the side. Yeah, again, Spectrum. Be sure to check that album out. It's a banger. Um, Tommy Bolin on one solo. I think it's Quadrant 4. Does a solo with the Echoplex, which was a tape loop device before we had digital looping. It was an actual little tape that ran and you could control it. There are only two people who could play the Echoplex with such proficiency that you could call them virtuosos on it. Was Herbie Hancock, who did it on electric Fender Rhodes piano, and Tommy Bolin. Now there are other people played it, but nobody could play it like Tommy. And that album was a smash. Um, Jeff Beck had a group called Beck, Bogert, and
Yeah.
Appice. Tim Bogert and Carmine Appice, or Carmine Appice. I've always said Appice.
Hmm.
Um, from Vanilla Fudge became his rhythm section, and they put out two really good albums. But then Jeff heard this Billy Cobham album,
Hmm.
and between John Hammer, who's playing the synthesizers,
Hmm.
and Tommy Bolin on the guitar. Well, he fired the band. I mean, he called it quits with that group, because they were going to probably keep on going. He realized he had a new direction, and so Tommy Bolin had a direct influence on the guy who he was influenced by. Tommy was a major fan of Jeff Beck. Loved the way he approached the guitar, and you could hear it in Tommy's playing. And yet, after Tommy Bolin and Spectrum, you could hear the change in Jeff Beck's playing. And you know, um, suddenly we had "Blow by Blow" by Jeff Beck, one of the great guitar albums of all time. And he was touring with that album, and that group, and he was out here in Denver at Takeo um, Loretta Heights. It was called. Now it's called Takeo Loretta Heights.
Hmm.
But Loretta Heights was a college, and so we're all sitting on the floor with it was the opening band was Mahavishnu Orchestra,
Hmm.
and then Jeff Beck came on,
Wow.
and
Wow.
during "She's a Woman,"
Yeah.
the Beatles cover that he
Right.
does, he hands the guitar into the audience, and to this girl who hands it right to this guy sitting next to her, and that guy picks it up on the downbeat, and plays this real fast kind of Les Paul esque line that Jeff did on the actual album. It blew Jeff away. He was like, "Oh my God, what the heck?" And then he couldn't get the guitar back because Tommy finished out the song. It turned. He stands up. He tells him, "Stand up, take a bow." Stands up, turns around, and oh, it's Tommy Bolin.
Unbelievable.
Um, Before that, I had opportunities to play with Tommy because he was friends with a guy who I played in his band. A name you won't know, but one of the great guitar players ever. But he's not with us anymore.
Hmm.
Um, Substance abuse took him out early,
What a
and
tragedy.
his name
Yeah.
was Anthony Lee Rodar, one of the great guitar players.
Hmm.
Him and Tommy would jam all the time at Anthony's house, and I was Anthony's bass player, so I got a chance to sit in on some of that stuff, and we jam that Billy Cobham stuff all the time. Um, so I had an opportunity once at some kind of a gig. I was just there with Anthony, and they, for some reason, needed a bass player. He had one of the great bass players of all time, as God, Sidney Stanley Sheldon,
Okay.
who wound up playing with Peter Frampton on Frampton Comes
Right.
Alive.
Right.
Um, so, apparently, from what I hear, getting ahead of myself, Tommy got the gig with Deep Purple because of Jeff Beck's recommendation.
Wow.
Um, at the time, Tommy was playing in the James Gang. The James Gang, Joe Walsh left, and they got this other guitarist, a European guy, Dominic
Right.
Troiano, who was a really good guitarist,
Hmm.
but it just wasn't the James Gang anymore. But when Tommy came in, it was a new James Gang.
Hmm.
James Gang Bang, and then Miami, two really wonderful James Gang
Hmm.
albums. And then Tommy put out two albums of his own about that time. So the years get all mixed up on me. But then he winds up in Deep Purple, and that Deep Purple money. When you got that rich rock star money, boy, it can wind up killing you because you're spending it on things you maybe shouldn't.
Yeah.
And he died of an overdose. I don't think he would have gone. I mean, he was always tempted. I'll just put it that way
Mm.
because people, you hear somebody dies of an overdose and you think he had a lifelong substance abuse problem. Tommy was Tommy most of the time, but sometimes he made bad choices. But Jesus, what a great guitarist and what a great guy. He was a friendly man, and it was a joy to be around. I always felt better being in the same room as him. Um, and then 1976, he's gone. I mean, what? It's like,
Yeah.
he just made, I think, one album with Deep Purple, I think,
Hmm.
and they
I think maybe, yeah, I
replaced him
think you're
with
right.
Steve
I think one
Morse.
or two. I don't know. I'd have to check it out.
Yeah,
But
I only
yeah,
remember, I don't think maybe it was two, Stormbringer and Come
well,
Taste the Band.
why I'm thinking of two is I think he was with him for 2 years. Am I right on that?
I think he was on Stormbringer now that I
Yeah.
think of it.
Okay. Well, I'll check that
And
out.
then
The
Come
nice
Chase the
thing about
Band was his
Google is you
last
can
one.
check these out. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Um,
So, I mean, he wasn't born here, but this is Boulder was Tommy's thing,
yeah.
and man, a band that gets overlooked seriously is Zephyr. What a great band that was. Candy Gibbons was their lead singer,
Mm-hmm.
David Gibbons. And Tommy was just a kid. I think he was like 16 or something when he was in that band,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And they were even on American Bandstand, if I remember.
Wow.
Candy Gibbons was a great, great singer. She was really wonderful. And then Tommy's, guitar, sort of Jeff Beck like guitar. Um, so, and then, he leaves Zephyr,
Mm-hmm.
and the guy that starts Firefall
Mm-hmm.
replaced him, Jock Bartley,
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it was a lot of playing in each other's bands and stuff like that. Saw Tommy in concert a lot of times down here in Denver at a bar, sort of a music club called Ebbets Field. That's because the guy who owned the place was from Brooklyn, so he named it after the ballpark there. But man, oh man, the stuff that he did there. One thing I thought I should mention too is he had, you know, um, he came up with these thimbles that he used instead of a slide. You see the people with the slide on the one finger,
Mm-hmm.
for slide guitar. He played with thimbles. He put them on his hand, and so he could jam out, but he could also do slide. And that was something I'd never seen anybody do since
Well,
or before.
when you recommended Spectrum, and I've been listening to it, I really have. Um, Here's what I noticed, because before that, I kind of had a picture of Tommy in my mind about being a rock and roller and, just hard rock essentially.
Yeah,
Post Toasty, that comes to mind. I love that song. I
sure, sure. Yeah, yeah.
listen to it all the time. I love the guitar in that song. But man, I listened to this Spectrum album. One of the things that jumped out at me is it sounds like Jeff Beck. you know,
Well, there's a reason.
yeah,
It's because he turned Jeff Beck into Jeff Beck.
yeah,
You
yeah. Well,
know,
see, now
it's
that's worth gold right there. I didn't even know that. I didn't know the influence he had on him and vice versa. But
yeah, that's
yeah,
that is so weird because Tommy was definitely a Jeff Beck guy.
yeah,
I remember sitting at Anthony's house once listening to the Jeff Beck group that had Bobby Tench and Max Middleton in it,
hmm,
and he just said, "Play that over." There was one song, played it over and over again, and then also their version of "Going Down."
yeah, yeah.
Um, Jeff Beck had a really great and by the end of the day, Tommy had that thing down cold.
My,
He's playing the exact things that Beck was playing. So so Jeff Beck influenced him. Turn around after Beck heard him with Billy Cobham, that it changed Beck's kind of perspective.
yeah. No, I love that. I really do. The sound is awesome. I listen to people like Robin Trower and guitarists like Kirk Hammett from Metallica and people like
Hmm.
that. I just love their style.
Yeah,
But Bolin is in a class all to himself. It's really
it is true.
it's really tragic the way that life ended. It makes me sad. It really does. I'm a Coloradan now. I mean, my accent is obviously Iranian. I'm Iranian American, but
Yeah,
I've lived in Colorado for years now. And so for me, part of the
you
joy,
started hearing this name.
yeah, part of the joy in Bolin is that he's a Colorado guy. And I agree with you. He spent so much time here that it made it
Yeah,
his home, basically. But
yeah.
one thing I love about you is you're very humble. So I asked you to talk about yourself a little bit, and you didn't. So not as
Ah,
much anyway. But
well,
tell us about your band. Tell us about your poetry. All that stuff.
well, I've been writing poetry since I was a little kid.
Hmm.
Played in a million bands. I I also was a roadie for a little while.
Hmm.
Um, I um, I played with Robert Cray. I played. I was a roadie for Steve Miller
Wow.
for just a brief time.
Wow.
Was a roadie for too long of a time with Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Lost
My.
my hearing. Huh?
I said, my.
I was Greg Lake's guitar tech for a while
Wow.
because I played guitar and bass,
What a
and
resume.
I had one of those ripper basses that Greg had, so I knew my way around on that thing.
Yeah.
Um, but Jesus, that tour, back in the day, back in the '70s, you didn't think about, having earphones or earplugs in, and as a result, during brain salad surgery, I lost a lot of hearing, or I got tinnitus.
Mm-hmm.
And when there's quiet, most of the time if music's going, it goes away.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but so I did that, and then I formed a group that I was in with an old Air Force buddy um, that we lasted like 20 something years, 20, just about trying to think when he passed, 2021. Well, yeah, so 21 years that group lasted. We put out 6 albums. Um, we was always just on the surface, on the edge of breaking big, inexperienced at making our own, doing our own record company
Mm-hmm.
and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and then putting out albums just when CDs were going away. We just had the worst timing in the world. We got 6 really great albums. We did well on radio. Had some sales. The last one sold the most, still selling. Um, we're on all the spot. We're on Spotify primarily,
Mm-hmm.
YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
places like that. They're called Coyote Poets of the Universe.
Coyote Poets of the Universe.
And
What a name. Yeah.
yeah, well, here's the reason for it. Our first album, we didn't have a name. It was just me and Gary,
Mm-hmm.
and we're both playing, with our synthesizers and guitars, but also with our computers. Well, we're playing with the central processing unit, CPU. So we wanted to find a name that would fit those initials. Well, Gary lived right next to the hillside out in, um, I guess it was Littleton,
Mm-hmm.
where the Coyotes, it's Coal Mine Road out there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's back there where the coal mine has a fire going, so they can't build on top of it. So behind his house, there was these hills, and every night the coyotes would come out and start howling. So we couldn't record after the coyotes got busy
Mm-hmm.
because there was just no soundproofing it. And one of the guys that was in the band for a while, he quit before we got recording. He and I were poets.
Mm-hmm.
I did slam and performance poetry, but my heart and direction wanted to do more about putting poetry with music.
Mm-hmm.
I had some influences to that end, um, and spoken word with music and all that. The
Mm-hmm.
Moody Blues for one, you know. And so we were doing stuff where instead of singing, there was poetry,
Yeah.
and we were recording using acid loops, which eventually turns into a technology called GarageBand.
Mm-hmm.
But they were loops, and it was just me and Gary and a couple of people, playing on our computers. So, Coyote Poets of the Universe, we just picked the universe up because it was a U word.
Mm-hmm.
So we had our CPU initials, and you know, uh, we went and saw. I think it was the Chemical Brothers up at Red Rocks,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess me and Gary were old school because it was just 2 guys sitting there at a table with their computers with lots of lights. It was like, kind of a rave thing,
Mm-hmm.
and the lights and the effects were great, but we were like not impressed with 2 guys just sitting at computers. Hey, they made impressive music, don't get me wrong, but as a visual eye candy thing for 2 old farts like us,
Mm-hmm.
it was like, oh come on, we gotta. So we formed a band. We had a 12-piece band going for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
um, with horns, the whole shooting match. Um, and when Gary passed away, he was dealing with cancer,
Mm-hmm.
and he was beating the cancer, and the damn COVID took him out.
Oh
You
boy.
know, um,
Yeah.
and our singer inherited land and
Mm-hmm.
and stuff back east in Vermont, in her home country. So she moved. We lost our singer and our guitar player, and the band kind of went here and there, and trying to make up my mind if we're going to restart that. I've played in other bands since then. One that we're working on the project right now is a group called Bad Fun, and we're going to get that out on, get it out there
Hmm.
into the public. A lot of stuff to do. I'm still playing.
Yeah.
Play play bass all the time. I can't help myself when I'm sitting at home with nothing to do. The bass is in my hands. I still write poetry. I'm a performing uh, performance poet, and I got a Sunday night show that features avant-garde jazz
Hmm.
and spoken word. And poetry has been a component of jazz since the beginning. From the Harlem Renaissance with Langston Hughes to the beatniks. The beat poetry of Jack
Yeah.
Kerouac and
Yeah.
that. And then hip hop became a thing with poetry and jazz.
Hmm.
And now we have a new sort of a format that the Grammys have started the spoken word poetry. Um, so that before spoken word in the Grammys were like, Jack Nicholson wrote a book and he'd win a Grammy for talking his book,
Hmm.
or Hillary Clinton, or it was usually um, um, books that somebody was reading. So poetry was getting short shrift, and there's been, for years, all this great stuff.
Hmm.
Uh, and so I play a lot of that on my show. Well, I play the whole gamut, from the Harlem Renaissance and Langston Hughes, you know, all the way up into what we have going now, like, say, Malcolm Jamal Warner,
Hmm.
Moore Mother. Her name's Moor Mother. Um, Great poets that are out there making stuff. So I'm keeping a light in the window for them.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Um, Remind me, everybody, before I wrap up, to ask Andy to give us some contact information for those who are interested. But to wrap up, one question that I'm dying to ask you: did you play bass on Post Toasty at all?
No, no,
No.
no.
Busting out with
I never
Rosie? No.
recorded. Didn't record with him. I sat in once when he needed a bass
So it
player
was mainly just
at
like a
some club.
session. Yeah.
I think Stanley was playing bass on that.
Okay.
Um, and then just jamming at Anthony's basement. And the first time I played with him, I was on an upright bass in Washington Park.
Mm-hmm.
We're just sitting around. That's how they met. These two really good guitar players. They're challenging each other. They talked about working together.
Mm-hmm.
And just sad as hell that in Anthony's case it was drinking, and in Tommy's case, that
Yeah.
overdose. Um, you know, damn,
What a shame.
what a
Yeah.
waste. I mean, because imagine what they'd be doing now.
Well,
You
I
know,
think one message out of all this is what a beast addiction is. And I think it's just really important for young people to think twice, for anybody,
look,
really.
I'm proof you can make it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I was all over the coke,
Hmm.
man, in the '80s. Um, and I was lucky. I was married to a wonderful woman. But
Hmm.
sadly, we're both addicted to coke,
Hmm.
and we helped each other get through
Yeah,
it.
you bet.
You know, and I'm here to talk about it.
Yeah.
I don't want to preach or anything. The preaching comes from the loss.
Yeah.
You know, Tommy Bolin starts getting that Deep Purple money. He blows it on heroin, and that takes him out.
Well, and it's
Um,
just
you
incredibly
know,
sad. He was 25, 25,
yeah,
and he
yeah.
sounded so mature on that instrument. Uh,
Oh,
I
listen,
mean,
he was already, when he joined Zephyr, he was a kid,
yeah,
and he was already a gunslinger in that at that
yeah,
point. First time I ever heard him, I couldn't believe somebody so young was playing like that.
yeah. Well, Andy, I just want to thank you so much for joining us today. And then, with everything that you have going, ladies and gentlemen, this is one deep man with a lot of wisdom, a lot of talent. So, worth knowing for sure. So, how can people get in touch with you if they're interested at all?
Um, Andy O at kuvo.org.
Okay.
My radio show is on. I got two shows that I'm on Thursday nights from 8 to 10
Mm-hmm.
at kuvo.org, or 89.3 if you're in Denver on the FM, and Sunday night from 9 to midnight we have the Night Beat, which is, I don't know if it's the only one, but it might be
Mm-hmm.
the only poetry and jazz where we play that much poetry in the country. There were other ones, but like Ken Nordine passed away, and some other people have passed.
Right.
John Sinclair passed away.
Right.
So kind of the last man standing, knock on wood.
Hallelujah.
And
Thank you, Lord. Um,
Sunday
yeah.
nights, we do it there. And oh, yeah, you can hear us on Spotify, Coyote Poets of the Universe. We have 6 albums out. And I'm more proud of the later ones. Strange Lullaby is my favorite. But our second one's pretty good too. Moving to the Moment, we had some other famous poets with us on that one.
Okay.
So,
Well, you yourself are a treasure, sir, in the state of Colorado.
ah,
We are thankful to have
thanks.
you, and you really blessed us with a great show today. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate
We'll
you.
be in touch. Bye bye.
Okay.